Well, a young Australian fighting a gambling addiction has revealed he's lost more than $300,000 over the past decade. Triple J's hack program has spoken to Dylan, who says he's got hooked on gambling as a teenager in high school. He's now trying to stop other young people from taking up gambling, saying it's cost him his youth. Hack presenter Dave Marchese joins us now from Sydney. Hi there, Dave. Can you tell me just how Dylan got into gambling?
Yeah, I mean, like so many other young people in Australia, it started when he was a kid. Dylan says he remembers placing bets on the Melbourne Cup with his family. It was all a bit of fun. Then he says by the time he was 14, he was already gambling at school with friends. They had different apps. They were using the accounts of older friends to gamble. And then by the time he'd turn 18, he was completely hooked. He said, the thing I remember about my 18th birthday is the first thing I did was go and sign up to a bunch of accounts because now I was allowed to. So his life kind of spiralled out of control from that point. And people might be thinking, well, that seems pretty rare to be so hooked on gambling at such a young age. But we know the research tells us that 600,000 kids under the age of 18 say they've gambled in the past 12 months, losing $18 million. So this is a really, really big problem.
When did Dylan realise he had a problem? I mean, you mentioned there he started so young at the age of 14 having a bet on the Melbourne Cup with his parents.
Yeah, well, he said now that he looks back, the warning signs were there from when he was a kid before he turned 18, but it was when he had access to gambling himself and he was of age that things really started to deteriorate. He was a big cricketer, got this massive opportunity to go over to the UK to play cricket, but he couldn't escape the gambling and he ended up stealing from his host family to pay for his gambling. That money was eventually paid back, but his life was just spiralling. He said he lost a lot of his friends, he wouldn't leave his room, and he at some points wouldn't even eat. He was so focused on placing the next bet. And his next 10 years were like that. From 18 to 28, he just was in this cycle of gambling, and says the gambling companies were hitting him up. They knew he had a problem, but they kept on ringing him, and account managers were offering him incentives, free tickets to the footy, also tickets to other big games that made him feel like that he was very important, but it was just fueling this really horrible addiction.
I believe Dylan's been documenting his recovery on social media. Why did he decide to do that?
Yeah, he said for a few reasons, and it's rare that we hear from someone who's actually going through the process now, and we hear from people who faced gambling addiction. It's usually on the other side with a whole bunch of hindsight, but to have Dylan 150 days free of gambling, so he's about 5 months in, and being so honest and open and journaling that on TikTok on a weekly basis is pretty rare, I would say. He said it was about accountability. It was also about providing other young people with some information and assuring them that they can get through it as well. He wants to make sure other people know that they shouldn't lose their youth, that gambling might be looking fun and it might be pretty glamorous on your social media feeds, but it's a lot more serious. And he says the consequences for him were really bad. Let's have a listen.
In bed at night time, I'd lose a bet and I'd like hit myself and punch myself and kind of take anger out on myself. And then a lot of years of not wanting to be here and just, a lot of self-negative talk. And it's just not healthy and not good.
So, Dave, what have advocates had to say about this?
Yeah, I've spoken to a few advocates about this story and Dylan's story in particular, and they say, look, it's horrible, it's devastating, but it's absolutely not rare, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. One anti-gambling advocate, Mark Kempster, told me this morning he's had 3 people Dylan's age get in touch with him this week with similar issues, and that is just the norm, that young people or their families are getting in touch, and there's this real pressure building on the federal government to take action, because we know it's been 2.5 years since the Murphy inquiry recommended that gambling ads be banned across the board. Advocates say we can't just keep kicking this issue down the road. It needs to be dealt with now.